This episode of the DJ Force X podcast is proudly sponsored by FiXT. FiXT is a fan and artist-friendly independent record label that specialises in hybrid electronic rock. It's home to the likes of Celduella, Blue Starly, I Will Never Be the Same, Richie Nix, The Algorithm, Voicians, CD Akira, and a whole bunch more. Check out their latest label sampler for just $1 at their official store, FiXTstore.com. That's FiXT store.com. Save 10% off your first order by using my coupon code FORCEX. That's FORCEX. They have loads of shirts, hoodies, stickers, posters, and many other accessories for all their artists, and this is available worldwide with fantastic international shipping rates to go with that. So head over to FiXTstore.com and check them out. And don't forget, use my coupon code FORCEX. Hello and welcome to the DJ Force X show, episode 33. I've dropped the podcast, thrown in the show. Just because it sounds a little bit better. It was the name of my radio show, which brings me to my next thing. Of my radio show is actually 3 years old this month. It's made it to 3, which is amazing. I didn't think it would last that long. Maybe I didn't think my interest would keep in it that long, but it's still there. It's every Tuesday night, 11 o'clock UK time on TotalRock.com. You can work out your time zones and the difference of that. Where I'm here in the East Coast, it's actually 6 p.m. in the afternoon. So it's a nice early evening show. And it's also on Saturday nights at midnight East Coast time. It's about 5 o'clock in the morning for you UK people. On the Mix.fm, that's MIXX.fm. Both are available via the TuneIn radio app for your smartphone, which is a free app. And if you like listening to radio, get that app. It's great. Just put it on. You can find pretty much any radio station in the whole world. Which is great for me because I like to listen to like some of the sports stuff in the UK that you just don't get here. So I use that, and anyone else can use that as well as long as you've got a smartphone. But they also have the streams available on their website, both for any device. So go check them out, TotalRock.com and TheMix.fm. And also, after they've aired on those shows, I put it up for on demand on Mixcloud.com/DJ Force X. Now, it's a full-on plug for this show because I want the people who listen to this show to listen to my music show as well. You only hear me briefly barking over, giving what I've just played and things like that on the show. So you don't have to put up with my voice for that long. But it's just a pure mix, an hour-long mix of music. Just a solid block of music. Go check it out on Mixcloud. See if you like the style of it. It's kind of that electronic and rock kind of fused together in just a solid club-style mix. Anyway, on to other things. I want to say thank you to everyone who downloaded the last episode with Riley from Thrice. Not only was that a fun interview to do, it actually is turning out to be one of my most downloaded episodes so far. So for those who have continued to listen on from that one and are here right now listening to me warble on, thank you. And anyone before that who was subscribing and downloading before that, thank you again. Please, I ask this on most episodes, but please rate and review this show on iTunes. It will help it immensely. The downloads are one thing, but the reviews, the attention on that side of things is just the next level stuff. I can pretty much see how many times this show gets accessed via either a stream or a download, and that's it. I don't really see subscribers, how many I have. I can't really find the tool for that right now that's free. But please, if you can, rate and review, and I will love you forever, and I'll give you a shout out on my show as well. So if you can do that, that would be awesome. Other things in the news this week for me, football, soccer, the season has finished. I am a Liverpool fan, and we didn't end on the greatest note in the whole world. I think we were like 8th in the Premier League. We didn't win the Europa League Cup. And we obviously finished runners-up in the League Cup as well. So kind of second place, 8th place. But on to next season. And this summer as well, we have the European Championships. So hopefully England will do well. If not, I'll just watch the tournament as it is. Anyway, I've kept you long enough. I've warbled along far too much. So this is Stephen, a.k.a. Seamless. Enjoy.
Welcome. Thanks. It's fun to be here.
Cool, man. And how are you today?
I'm pretty good. How are things with you?
Yeah, things are good. Yep, weather's good. Everything's
good times.
Cool. So, Seamless, or SeamlessR, but I understand that the R is silent. Is that correct?
The R is indeed silent.
Okay. And why is that?
Well, once upon a time, I was just Seamless.
Okay.
But this was like long before I did anything music-wise. It was the name I used for like online video games. Mm-hmm. And whenever I would try to make an account on like a forum or YouTube or SoundCloud or anything, the Seamless, being a real word, was already taken as a account name. And so I put the R at the end of it, and that was because I was trying really hard not to do like the typical like Seamless Official or Seamless and a bunch of numbers kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I just did the R because it just essentially stands for I am the real Seamless.
Okay, cool. And was it your first EP that was titled The R is Silent? Is that right?
That was the second one.
Sorry.
Yeah, the first EP was called Momentum. That was actually, I was still trying to be just Seamless. But then there actually is another Seamless that does electronic music. There's actually a bunch of, there's like a metal band in some Midwestern state that's called Seamless.
Yeah.
But there's an artist that does tech house in the UK called Seamless, and he has been around longer than me, so I don't have the greatest claim to just being just Seamless.
Okay.
So I adopted SeamlessR as being the actual, like that's literally the name, and then the joke is the R is silent. So I'm just Seamless.
Cool. So can I get a bit of background on yourself, like how long you've been going, things like that?
How far back you want to go?
As far as you want to go.
All right. Well, I was born September 22nd, 1988. My father is a jazz/rock drummer. His side of the family, his brothers, my uncles, are all musical individuals. And so I've always grown up around music.
Yeah.
Around when I was like 7, my parents decided I needed to have some kind of extracurricular thing to be doing, and they asked me if I wanted piano lessons, and I said yes, because why not?
Yeah.
And I had I did classical piano training with a little bit of jazz for 8 or 9 years before I ever looked at a DAW. And then around 2004, and my sophomore year of high school, I went to Pioneer Valley Performing Arts, which is a performing arts charter school in Massachusetts, and they offered classes on all kinds of stuff, and one of them was electronic music production.
Nice.
And that's where I saw my first copy of FL Studio. Nice. Back then still called Fruity Loops because they hadn't been sued by Kellogg yet.
Yep, I remember it well.
And I just want to be clear to people who are listening that I was actually given an option between then Reason 2 and FL3. The difference being they had a Mac lab and a PC lab. Yeah. My parents are also career programmers, so I've always been around computers, and I've been a very big PC guy pretty much forever. Yeah. So FL was kind of the logical choice. And then I just kind of messed around with it. I had no real intention of doing anything really professional with it for a very long time. I got interested in doing metal stuff. I did that for a little bit. Yeah. And then I've always been inspired by people like Noisia and Skrillex and that style of sound design, even a little bit of older Soundweller stuff, actually. Yeah. And I just wasn't that great at it, especially early on. So I gravitated towards simpler in terms of like engineering things like metal and rock and that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And then around 2011, 2012, I discovered a couple like serious game changers in terms of sound design, fundamental theory, and I learned some stuff that allowed me to do what I've always wanted to do. And I made an immediate 180 and started doing like heavy bass music, electronic stuff, even though at the time, and also still now, I am in a metal band.
Okay. I was going to ask, because your look, I've seen a couple of pictures of you. You don't strike me as a typical like electronic artist. Just the huge beard and the long hair.
Yep.
So yeah, I was going to ask you if you're into metal, and you've answered that already. So, so that's cool. So yeah, tell me about your metal band.
Cool. So in 2010-ish, we started. It was out of a a pretty weird idea that I can't believe we ever thought was going to work. We had a band that we at the time we called God Eater that had 2 drummers, 3 guitarists. I was just a keyboardist, and I think a whole bunch of vocalists. Like a lot of people were in this band, and we had like a practice before it just imploded. And the remainder of the people who were there were one of the drummers, the vocalist, and me, and we formed a second band called Krakatoa.
Okay.
That was the band. I'm still in that band, but we actually reverted to our old name, God Eater, after the drummer left. He'd been in the band for 5 years, and he moved on to different things, and now we have a new drummer. So we said that we had made a pact early on that if any of the original members left, that we wouldn't call it Krakatoa anymore.
Yeah.
So we were called God Eater.
Cool. And what kind of metal? I mean, I could probably guess from the name, but if you want to.
Yeah. It's a real hard thing to parse. Our vocalist refers to our parent genre as blackened stoner metal.
Okay.
We have a lot of influences from a whole bunch of places. Like early on, I actually wasn't, like when I started in the band, I wasn't really that versed in metal. I knew like 3 bands, and then the vocalist, who was like this metal historian, put me in with some serious stuff that at the time I didn't really get or even like that much.
Yeah.
But I learned how to do it, and I eventually grew appreciation for it. And now I definitely have a much more refined ear for it. We right now, like with our new drummer, who is very different from my old drummer, our lineup is practically 100% different from what it was like when we started, and the sound reflects that. And it's really all over the place. Is really what I'm trying to say.
All right, cool. No, I'll have to check it out because I like my metal. So I was in a metal band myself, so it's yeah,
awesome.
I'll check it out. So it's called God Eater.
Yep.
Is there a SoundCloud, etc.? Everything?
There's actually nothing for that yet. There's a Bandcamp, actually. I lied. There's a Bandcamp, and all of the old Krakatoa stuff is still there. There's 3 albums. God Eater, we're still writing our first actual God Eater album.
Okay. And
none of that is available anywhere yet.
No. All right, I'll check out Krakatoa then. And I'll find that on Bandcamp. So
cool. The Bandcamp is still called God Eater.
All right. Okay. So the Bandcamp's called God Eater, but it's got the Krakatoa music on there. Okay. Cool. I will definitely check that out.
Yay.
I was in a sort of like doom sludge band for about 3 years before I moved here.
Nice.
Called Victorian Whore Dogs. And yeah, they're still going. They just released their first album, but yeah, it was that kind of like Will Haven-esque kind of Neurosis-y kind of sound.
Sure.
If you are aware of those bands.
I'm familiar with the Neurosis, at least.
Yes, yeah. And yeah, it was like kind of that sort of like, drawn out, long, heavy kind of screaming and things like that. So it was all good. So yeah, cool. So back to your Seamless side of things, the electronic side of things. I could definitely hear some of the rock influences in your music, with the way you use like bass guitar, things like that in some of the tracks. And I was just talking about your current EP, Wizard Bass, which is, I've got to say, a fantastic name. For a thing. Actually, when the guys at FiXT sent it to me, it was just like I was instantly listening to it just purely off the name. So it's great. I love the tracks Ruin, which I played on my show last week, and Glass, which is a cool track. So, and it's very varied in its like electronic styles. You've got a bit of drum and bass in there, a little bit of house and some hard style. That last track. Which the name escapes me.
Modulators of the Universe.
That's the one, Modulators of the Universe. Kind of like veers on that hard style, like kind of old school, like hardcore gabba type thing.
Yep.
Which is cool. So what influences you on the electronic side of things? Obviously, I know you mentioned like Skrillex and things like that. Are there any like other artists in particular that really kind of molded that sound that you have?
Well, pretty much the entirety of like 2005 to 2009 drum and bass is like what I was really into. Like I mentioned Noisy earlier. Pretty much everybody that's ever been on Invisible Records, Pendulum, obviously, like a lot of that, and you probably heard plenty of that in Ruin and even a little bit in Glass, because that was like a lot of really old Posai, is how you say his name. And like that, like it seriously influenced me. And it's funny because like that sound, the Ruin especially, was the sound that I have been trying to do since the very beginning of me being a producer. That I only like 12 years later I've like figured out.
That's cool. I mean, that sort of drum and bass area is pretty good. I come from, obviously, I'm from the UK, so we had a lot of the sort of jungle movement, which was kind of very drum and bass. So my sort of like my influence come from like Goldie, Photech, sort of off the Metalheads label, and Renegade Hardware as well. If you've heard of that label,
I don't think so.
Okay, they're no longer a label, but they were known for releasing EPs every sort of 3-4 months. Various artists. A lot of the sort of big drum and bass artists that came out, like Chase and Status, things like that, released off them, like initial releases and things.
Nice.
But if you check them out, I mean, you can hear them on, I think, Spotify, Apple Music, whatever you're using to listen to your music. So, and they're very like the sort of like harder side, darker side of drum and bass as well.
Oh yeah, I've always been into like the super dark, like ultra bassy, just like seriously dense sounding stuff.
Yeah.
Like, I'm really into billin kind of things.
Yeah.
Like that particular style of like neuro. It's funny you mentioned like the streaming services, because back then I was listening to this stuff on iTunes Radio.
Nice.
Like that was the only way I knew how to listen to that kind of stuff, because like this is like YouTube didn't do anything back then. Like it wasn't around that much.
True. Yeah.
And there was like Rhapsody. That was pretty much it, besides just like iTunes. And I wasn't really big on paying for music, which, I mean, that's a common problem that kids have.
Yes.
So iTunes Radio it was.
Yes. No, I used to get sent like promos and stuff back in the day, like white labels and things like that. So that's how I heard a lot of these artists. And then Renegade came along and kind of like really sort of like, because I was kind of bored of the junglist movement. And then like when drum and bass, like when it came out of that, it was kind of a minimalist kind of sounding drum and bass, like the 2-step. And the bass lines were quite thin. They weren't as like heavy as they are now.
Yes, the liquid.
Yes, yeah, liquid. And then it sort of when like Renegade came out, it was that heavy, dark drum and bass that I've kind of wanted for a long time, but never heard it. I mean, there are a few tracks here and there that kind of went dark. There was one by Dillinger called Angels Fell, which sort of sampled Blade Runner, but it's quite a dark track. And then there's one, what's the other one? Like called Out of Body Experience or something. It was one of the sort of classic sort of jungle tracks of the time. It kind of like crossed over. And yeah, it was just sort of like, and then obviously people like Pendulum and things like that sort of became a bit more mainstream. And that came with that heavy sound that they have. Because obviously they doubled it up as a band as well, which kind of helps because you get those frequencies when you have those instruments.
Yes, it's definitely denser.
So do you perform live? Do you like DJ out or like perform these tracks live, or are you just more studio based?
As far as Seamless goes, I am pretty much 100% studio based, and I have tried to do the DJ thing. I've done it twice. I've also done like I've played out like at actual places and venues and like and doing shows. I've also done like in the studio sort of live streamed DJ stuff. And like, I don't know if it's because I'm used to being in a metal band, but it bores the hell out of me. It's a serious problem. I can't get into it. And like, I've like studied people who do like DJ shows and like out, because I know like, you know, Noisia does it, and I've been to like a Skrillex show. Like it was super energetic, but like I can't get into that as hard as they do. And I just have to be doing things, which is why like recently I have this bass guitar. It's called an industrial radio MIDI bass.
All right.
Industrial Radio being the company name, and the MIDI bass being what it is. And it's an actual bass guitar. It's a 4-string. They have a 5-string model too, and it's MIDI tracked.
Right.
Which like typical guitar MIDI tracking is accomplished through pitch like detection, that kind of thing, which works fine for normal guitars because they're high enough frequency to be able to do that. But bass strings are a little floppy for that kind of detection. So what the MIDI bass does is that the frets themselves are actually wired, so that when you make contact with a string, that's how it knows where it is, what pitch, like what actual note it's supposed to be. And it does no on-off based on piezo inputs and a whole bunch of other really awesome stuff. And there's also this thing called the radio pick, which is just a straight-up radio transmitting pick that can perfectly track no on-off based on just playing with a pick. And so with a combination of these extremely reliable sources, it comes across as perfect MIDI tracking. And like the greatest thing that could possibly happen out of this is that some kind, like, because you mentioned Pendulum being like, they had a real band, and like as cool as that was, and it was really cool, I feel like it had a negative influence on what I liked in their sound. Like, and this is a personal opinion as all hell. Like, I obviously people like in silico onward, then that's fine. But I've always been a much more of a fan of the hold your color kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And like the sort of band versions of the hold your color tracks were fine, but they weren't the hold your color tracks.
No.
And that's always been a tremendous limitation of live performance, is that like, how do you play the perfect studio, the synthesis versus and you play it live without, compromising. Yeah. And so like the greatest thing for me in the world would be no compromise, playing the actual tracks like live with at least like the minimal amount of backing track as possible, like, and that's really stupendously hard.
Yes, yeah, for that style of music, because I've known a few bands that have that kind of crossover sound, but they definitely have backing tracks to make it like the album version, because it is difficult to get that sound out of that once you've produced something fully in the album, and then you play it live. It doesn't. Like you say, it doesn't always work. And so, like with Pendulum, those albums of the tracks off the first album, translating live without the extra layers like in the background doesn't work, because they weren't built on a band. Yeah. Whereas in Silico onwards, were kind of built towards that sound, that setup. Yeah. So that when they do play it live, it sounds like the album, the studio.
Yeah, and like there's also groups like the Chemists who were always that. So it makes a lot more sense in the sound, and it works for them. But I also want to play like the really complex, like super narrow stuff, and I want to be in control of it. I want to be responsible for it. Yeah. And because that's what I am, like when I'm playing the bass in my metal band, which like when you find my metal band, and if you like see pictures of it on my Facebook page or whatever, you might notice that I have another bass guitar that has 2 keyboards attached to it.
Okay.
And it's because I mentioned in the original God Eater days, I actually was just a keyboardist. But funny thing about the Krakatoa days is that we couldn't keep a bassist to save our life. So like we literally went through 7 of them before we ever played our first show. Okay. And then we tried a couple more, and like they were all right. But like the ultimate resolution was that like I just decided that I would do both. I would play keyboards and I would play bass. And which wasn't that difficult, because we kind of designed both things to be not very obtrusive. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't like tremendously technically difficult. It's just that the system I had to design to be able to do that was kind of a lot. But like I'm responsible for everything. It's all happening live. There's no real backing tracks, and there actually could not have been backing tracks because our original drummer also couldn't stay in time to save his life. It's a fantastic drummer. Like he does the craziest stuff, but timing is not his strong suit. No. Which in a live environment doesn't really matter, because we can organically change with it. But if we have a backing track, that's a problem. Yeah. So everything has to be triggered live. Yeah. And so I did.
Okay.
And I'm used to that kind of responsibility and that kind of just like control over everything. And doing anything less just feels lame as hell.
Yeah. So with did you manufacture that yourself, the bass guitar with the keyboards on it?
Yeah, the first model, I literally just like epoxied keyboards onto like the empty space on a bass guitar. Okay. And that lasted a pretty long time. And then the second version, I like created a plywood support that I sort of attached to the bass itself. I got like a crappy used bass, like damaged bass. To try that too, because I wouldn't recommend drilling into a nice bass.
No. I was going to say, it better not have been a nice bass to do that to. So, but yeah, get those cheap ones, and then you can do whatever you want to them.
Precisely. That was really handy for experimentation purposes, to learn about like ergonomic and that kind of thing. Yeah. Yeah. And then actually, like with the MIDI bass, I have plans to do that too. But the way I'm doing with that is with Velcro. Okay. Because one of the limitations of having the MIDI, like the keyboards attached to it, is that it can't fit in any kind of guitar case. No. And with the sort of permanent design of the plywood thing, I just like left the bass like by itself, like in our car when we're driving to shows and stuff. And there's no way in hell I'm doing that to the MIDI bass. No. I was going to say that is that. I've seen like MIDI guitars, like advanced ones, like price wise. Is that bass particularly? Is it expensive? It's around $4,000.
Hell.
It's a lot.
That's a lot of money. You don't want to be sticking stuff to that, like drilling through it or anything. So
nope. I saved up an extremely long time for that bass, and I actually like labored over putting the Velcro on it.
You can't program it to trigger what you need it to trigger, or
I could, but like the way that the bass playing works is that there's keyboard parts and then there's the bass line, and the bass line is simple enough that I can just tap the bass line.
Okay.
I can just the idea is that I am playing both at the same time.
Okay.
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I can imagine it being, because my bass guitar is my sort of like weapon of choice, if you will. It was the one that the first instrument I really learned. Obviously I picked up guitars, played piano and stuff before, but not learned how to play it. I just work stuff out. But a bass guitar I actually went to school to learn. So, but yeah, just sort of like knowing to do those two things at the same time just seems it's quite incredible, to be honest with you. Just thinking about it, because like I was a DJ in a band for a while, scratch DJ. So I was triggering samples, scratching, doing vocals as well at the same time. So I get the multitasking part of it, but strapping a keyboard to a bass guitar is just like having the whereabouts to do it sounds really cool. So
honestly, I didn't think it would work like while I was doing it. The idea, like I suggested the idea, and then my vocalist like encouraged me to do it. And later I found out he was drunk while we were having a conversation. And he was all like, "This is great." He was couldn't necessarily read how inebriated he was, but and like every step of the way, because like a lot of stuff has to work for this to be a thing.
Yeah.
Because the way this works is that like I have the bass, I do my tones, I do all the synth stuff on the laptop on stage.
Yeah.
And then I run it all through a PA if like they don't have a front of house setup. And so I do the bass signal into FL, and then I do the keyboard MIDI wise. I have like this USB hub on the bass because it's two keyboards, and then I have a USB extension cable that goes to the thing, and then I have a pedal board. I have an FCB 1010 from Behringer, which has 10 switches, some page switches, and then 2 expression pedals.
Okay.
And all that goes to MIDI. And I like a part of making this work is that I cheat as hard as possible on as much as I can. And so like on the pedal board, especially in the earlier songs that were originally written for like a full piano, I had an 88 key keyboard controller with like, two-handed parts. So what I would do is that for all the things that were left-handed, I would record out as samples, and then I would put them up on the triggers on the pedal board.
Yeah. And
then all the right-hand stuff I'd play on the actual keyboard, and then I'd play the bass line. So I'm like foot triggering stuff, keyboard, bass, all at the same time. And just like initially just imagining this happening, I'm like, there's no way like the latency can match up, the connections are good. There's too many places for failure. There's way too many like links in the chain there. And I was just like flabbergasted that it worked the first time I did it.
That's crazy. Because even in my head right now, I'm thinking about it, and I'm like, how does that work? So I'm going to have to witness. If you've got any live videos or anything, I'll have to witness that happening. So
there's a couple of really terrible recordings that are around. There's a video demonstration of it actually on my YouTube channel.
I was going to ask if your YouTube channel had that. So
if you look up the technical term for this instrument is the super bass double guitar.
Okay.
If you Google that, you'll find it.
Yeah. Cool. I'll definitely look that one up as well. So that's cool.
Yeah.
So with the new MIDI bass thing you've got right now, is that wireless, or does that still require a cable?
It requires a cable. It has like this VGA cable thing that it connects to that it goes out to a breakout box that and it actually does all really neat stuff. It takes the MIDI, the regular pickup control, which there is also a regular out for, and the piezo outputs as well as a separate thing. But the piezo outputs it's not like a whole thing. It's actually separate piezo outputs for every string. And this is part of what they refer to as the Imprint System, where what you do is you link up those piezo outputs and you put them into something like they actually have a reactor plugin they made that they put out, but you could do this manually too if you know how. Where you generate an envelope follower to follow the piezo outputs, and then you link that to the volume of outputs on the strings. And the strings can also output to individual MIDI channels per string.
Oh, wow.
So you can link like the same thing on all 4 strings, and then you have that volume follower on the piezo level. So it's like direct volume control based on like literal expression of the strings.
Crazy.
it's really, really cool when it works.
Yeah, no, I mean, for the price you pay for it, I expect it to do everything for you. But that sounds just like that's just crazy. Like everything you can do with it, like assigning everything separately as well. That's just
and like with the configuration of the separate MIDI channels and routing, and also a lot about how FL handles MIDI routing and channels, that kind of thing. I could actually manually zone the guitar. Not just per string, but like amount of frets. I could have the first 4 strings up to the 6th fret be one sound, and then like the ensuing 6 frets be another sound. So like I have vertical range enough to play a whole range on one sound, and I just move up the neck to play the next sound.
That's crazy.
The possibilities are really endless, and I haven't explored enough to understand like the real limits of performing with it.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna have to catch up on a lot of this stuff because I was very much into my like electronic stuff before I left the UK. I went to like a couple of like trade shows or expos or whatever that they had in the UK at the time, and I kind of fell out of it when I came here. I continued DJing, like I said, I've got the radio show and stuff, but as for actual like instruments and things like that, I've kind of fallen back because a lot of my stuff is still in the UK. I'm trying to bring over here, so I've got all my bass guitars, all my regular guitars. My turntables are still over there, so it's just kind of like eventually once I get enough money it'll all come over. But I've kind of been out of the loop, so to speak, on this kind of technology. So because I think a couple of years ago it was as much as a keytar was probably as close as you were going to get to what you're explaining to me now. And that was still very like retro kind of comeback, but then didn't. So
and like there have been fully just perfectly okay MIDI guitar like form factor guitars that have like the buttons on the frets and the like the touchpad on where you would strum and that kind of thing, and like the Ztar and that kind of stuff, and those are all perfectly fine, but I really just like the aesthetic and the form factor and the realism of an actual bass guitar.
So does it feel like an actual like heavy wise, like the weight of it, the feel of it, it all feels like what would be a normal bass guitar?
Oh, it's a real bass guitar. It's made out of parts from Warmouth.
Okay.
Warmouth.
Yeah.
And it's just got like an unprecedented amount of electronics in it. And there's really the rest of that.
Cool. That sounds amazing. I'm gonna have to definitely check that one out. So, we mentioned you mentioned your YouTube channel. Let's chat a little bit about that. You do like tutorials and things, is that right?
Indeed.
Yeah. And I see you offer lessons on your website as well.
Yes.
So how did that come about? I mean, I've seen various things online when I wanted to learn a bit more about Ableton, stuff like that. I go on YouTube or I go on on lynda.com. But yeah, how did that come about? How did you get started with that?
Well, around 2012, I actually made my YouTube channel in 2008. And that's because at the time I fancied myself a gamer of games. Yeah. And I had some videos of me playing some stuff. And that never really went anywhere. It was not really a thing. Mm-hmm. I also didn't get the YouTube landscape well enough to ever have made it a thing. I remember until I started doing tutorials, the video that I had a video that had 70,000 views on it, which was the most views I'd ever got on anything combined. And it was a Minecraft video. And I was like, oh, I should just do Let's Plays now. And that's what's happening, right? And it flopped immediately. So it was a weird time, but I kind of left it alone. Didn't really do anything with it until around 2012. And that was when I mentioned before that I discovered some sound design theory that really opened up everything for me. And also a couple of new stuff because at the time ImageLine's plugin Harmor was a year or so old. I'm not sure when it came out. It was probably 1 or 2 years old. It was pretty new. And this is an additive synthesis plugin, and additive synthesis itself, while not being terribly new, it still wasn't as widely adopted as regular FM and subtractive stuff is. So a lot of tricks with it were totally out of people's radar. And one of the things that I would do, because if you think about sound design of a lot of old noisy stuff, the word that comes up a lot whenever anyone's how do you do that? People would go resampling. Yeah. And you just got to resample, whatever. So the first thing I did with Harmor is I tried to resample a bass in it because you can resynthesize sounds in it. And it comes out as sounds like you're playing the audio again, even though it's really been synthesized.
Yeah.
So that was a big kicker because I didn't really get this about. There's a lot about sound design I didn't know back then, but unison isn't really an effect, like an audio effect, so much as it is a voice effect. And there's ways of doing that to like in post processing that I just wasn't good at. But because Harmer resynthesized it, I could just use Harmer's internal unison settings and process it in such a way that it gave me the results I had always wanted. Nice. Pretty immediately. And so fantastically and so just like easily and fast that like after I did it, I was just like, I have to tell people. They have to know about this. This is too much. And I made a video about it. I posted on the ImageLine forums, and then Scott Fisher, the guy who does all the PR and stuff for ImageLine, I think his title is Communications Director. He posted my video on the FL Studio Facebook page, which like boosted the hell out of everything. And like I did that right after that. Like immediately after this, or maybe it was before, around like the same time, I'd also discovered a couple of fundamental truths about FM synthesis, which it's still kind of confusing to people who are new, but back then it was like the boogeyman of sound design that whenever anyone did something that nobody understood, they just automatically attributed it to FM. And so I made some videos about that, and like I made like 2 or 3 videos, and then after they had blogged like every single one, I was like, I could do it. I could do this. I could just do this. And I just kind of kept on with it.
Yeah.
And grew.
Cool. So how many subscribers are you up to now?
Let me check. 102,057.
That's pretty good. So how many videos do you have on there right now? Off the top of your head.
1,300.
Oh, wow. So regular content then. So anyone into kind of electronic music or wants to learn more, it's probably a good place to go.
Yes, I work for those of you who may not know this about me. I work primarily in FL Studio, but I do try to present the information in such a way that it can be accessible in other DAWs, because for the most part, all the DAWs these days, at least, do kind of the same stuff, just in different ways.
Yeah. I mean, I've been across a few of them. I've used Fruity Loops back in the day. I haven't used it since they kind of went FL Studio wise, but back in the day when I didn't have any money and kind of downloaded programs to use, that was one of them. So, but now I'm old enough and earning enough money to pay for these programs, and thankfully they've come down in price. So because back then Cubase was almost £1,000.
Yeah, the software was incredibly expensive back then. I like that. I like that most. Like even across other artistic like realms of production and that kind of thing, most software is coming to like a subscription model.
Yes. Yeah, I've noticed that with Adobe recently. I went back into sort of web design and went to see how much Dreamweaver was, and found that they're actually doing it at like $20 a month if you use it like professionally. So
yeah, and if you get like a student discount, you can get all of it, like all like the CS6 stuff, like the whole thing for like $50 every 3 months, something like that. It's like it's really accessible considering beforehand that it cost you $5,000.
Yes, yeah. Well, the educational discount's always been good on those, because when I was learning web design, things like that, through the college I was at, we got the entire it wasn't Adobe then; it was actually Macromedia, I think.
Oh man, I forgot that.
Yeah, it's a Macromedia suite, so I got that, Flash, all that. Well, not Flash, but yeah, Flash, like Shockwave, that was it. And their equivalent of Photoshop at the time, Fireworks.
Yeah, and like I don't know if you're familiar with the EastWest sample libraries.
No.
They're extraordinarily large and really high quality, like orchestra stuff. And they also they have other kinds of sound design as well, but they're primarily known for their orchestra libraries.
Yeah.
They're kind of like think about like the depth and size and use of like Superior Drummer, but for orchestras.
Oh, nice.
And they've always been like Adobe expensive. That's been their kind of thing. But they recently went over to a subscription model as well, which I think is like huge, because the stuff is powerful, and people having access to it will be a net good for everyone.
I guess it cracks down on cracked versions of it as well. So,
yes,
yeah. So you have to subscribe to it. You can't like just get the program and then have it run on its own. So yeah, that's cool. So let's talk a bit about your studio. Obviously, you're seeing some pictures of it. I was just wondering what your favorite piece of gear was.
Well, right now I'm quite enamored with my Eurorack modular synth setup. Mm-hmm. I was actually introduced to the concept when I was hanging out with BT like 2 years ago, mm-hmm. and then eventually when I got signed to FiXT, then it became Clayton's ridiculous studio,
yes,
full of magical gear and like space age wonderment. And so I that was his studio was the first time I ever actually got to have hands-on time with the stuff when I visited them in Detroit a year and a half ago, I think. And so then like I slowly started building a small amount of it, and now I've got let's see, 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11 12 13 14 modules.
Cool.
And it's like this is a very interesting, like a philosophical like quandary for me, because I've always been in favor of the digital realm and like doing things in post, and I've been like a serious opponent to people who try to tell anyone that analog anything is better. And not because it is or isn't, but because their thoughts and like their studies are all dumb. And like, so especially because like there have been plenty of people who do the double blind test and no one can tell the difference and that kind of thing. But and as well, a big part of my whole YouTube thing is that I'm big on recreating sounds.
Yeah.
And I've always tried to keep that like digital and with like regular synths and explaining things at like a basic level, and not so much like get silent and then do this knob and you're done. Kind of like actually explaining stuff. And to that end, I've become super familiar with the limitations of digital, but also noting that there are some things that analog can still do that digital can't, at least not very easily.
Yeah.
A lot of that is kind of changing more every year. Like Reactor 6 came out and they have their blocks architecture, which is a literal recreation of the whole modular synth thing.
Oh, nice.
And part of it is that you can, like virtually anyway, route the signal into like actual like oscillator signals into something and modulate it at audio rate, which until I saw that happen, I wasn't aware you could do that digitally.
Yeah.
But like there's still a lot about like actual hardware that like functionality wise that digital it can do, just not in any way the same way. Yeah. So I've been experimenting with like the merits of analog and that kind of thing, and like it's also tremendously expensive, which like if I wasn't doing as well as I was with the stuff that I was doing, I would not ever do this.
No, I can imagine that does, because hardware is still expensive.
Yeah.
I've noticed that because I've been looking. Obviously, I've got my like digital setup, but I still like my live music or live instrumentation. But looking at like the synth side of things, that still hasn't dropped in price. And I've had a few in my time, and the modular parts and everything like that. It's just, I mean, obviously they're engineered, they're limited like engineering as well. They're not like mass produced kind of parts,
yeah,
so that they are going to be expensive to a point because they're only for a specialist crowd.
Yeah, they're not very. The scale isn't really there.
No, but it's still the if you've got the money to do it, then do it, because the payoff is so much better at the moment until the digital realm catches up, which, like you say, is doing step by step. Probably eventually it will do what you need it to do completely, but it's going to take a lot of engineering anyway to get that.
Oh yeah, and done, like. Insofar as like recreating the stuff that analog hardware can do in the way that analog hardware does it, like because there's all kinds of people, all kinds of plugins and companies that have done that are like physical modeling of analog synths and that kind of thing, which is a really roundabout way of doing that.
Yeah.
But in terms of like pure functionality, digital will always win. Like digital can always do stuff that analog could never even dream of.
Yeah, it is easier to kind of pick up that digital side of things and run with it. If you wanted to say, play live, you just need your laptop essentially. Or not even that, you just need, something that can play sound.
Pretty much.
So, but yeah, so like until, I don't know, I guess if you want to have that, experience live, then you have that set up. But if you don't, you can always have that, a laptop and a couple of microphones. I've seen bands do that, Or groups do that where they've literally got an MP3 player on the stage. It's it's and you take that away from them, and it's kind of, well, what are you going to do? If that crashes, kind of thing. So,
indeed,
yeah. So, how did the relationship with FiXT come about?
Well, I was introduced to them by BT. He was I showed him a song I did that had a lot of like orchestra and metal elements kind of like together, because I did kind of have this phase where all I ever wanted to do was to be Rhapsody of Fire, or just Rhapsody, I guess now. And like I just wanted to be like the really big orchestra, like epic metal. Like I just wanted to do that forever. So I did and tried for a long time. So I had those chops kind of lying around, and I would integrate them into electronic stuff. And then BT was like, "That's like, I have the label for you." And he introduced me to James Rhodes, of FiXT, label manager, and it all just kind of went from there. It was pretty straightforward, honestly.
Well, we've had James on the show before, so probably aware of him. We've also had Cell Dweller, Brett as well, Blue Starly, and Richie Nix as well. So, and the Chemists. Actually, I had them before they signed with FiXT, just about a month before they signed with FiXT.
Yeah, that's exciting. Like I was pumped as hell when I found out about that.
Yeah, no, I've loved that group for ages. Like obviously being from the UK, I heard of them back when they released Stompbox, because I was very much into the drum and bass scene around that, and they were kind of near where I was based in England as well.
And then talk about a double whammy.
Yeah,
because the Stompbox track was awesome.
Yeah,
and then the Spore remix of it.
Yes,
was like for a long time it was like the greatest thing I'd ever heard.
Yeah.
And it was a huge inspiration for like what the idea of what I thought, like what I wanted to do was.
Yeah, and then they followed it up with a collaboration with Mike Patton, which was completely like out of the blue. It's so good to see them actually sign with FiXT for the release of their album here in the US.
Yes.
And yeah, it's a fantastic album as well. So I can't really, can't knock it. So it's all good.
Yeah, there's a lot of talent floating around there.
Yes, yeah, and they've got another one coming with Seething Akira as well. So.
We had a big artist call to introduce everybody all at once.
Oh,
and
okay, cool.
It was interesting, and everyone got sent everyone else's music, and I had to listen, and it was pretty sweet.
Cool. So yeah, so what are your plans going forward at the moment?
Ooh, a lot of stuff. I actually recently announced a sale for lessons. For the month until May, the end of May, I'm doing lessons at $40 an hour as opposed to the usual $90 an hour.
Oh, cool.
And they can be scheduled whenever, just as long as the scheduling happens before the end of May. Yeah. And so I'll be doing a lot of lessons as that comes up.
Yeah.
I did a similar thing last year where I did if you schedule it during the month of July that you got the big discount, and I scheduled almost all the 90 slots I had open for July.
Nice.
It was a busy month.
Yeah. I can imagine being sat there and is it all via Skype and everything you do this?
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, cool.
It's pretty straightforward. Yeah. And I've done, since I started doing lessons in like 2013, I've done thousands of them.
Are they one-to-one, or are they group, or are they?
They're one-to-one.
One-to-one. Oh, that's really cool. And that works well for people, because I've not tried it. So I know a couple of my musician friends do this, especially when they're out on tour and things. They kind of do it in the off time and stuff. So I was just wondering how that worked for you. Is it quite comfortable in the setting?
Yeah, it works out a lot better than I initially anticipated. And like, I actually didn't think anybody would ever have wanted lessons, because I try as hard as I can to kind of put everything I know in the videos that I put on YouTube. But I can understand that, like, if it's not moving at someone's pace, or that I don't answer questions that I assume that, was sort of common knowledge, which is always a problem. And so they get to ask questions, and they get to sort of dictate how the flow of information, which can be much more comfortable for people. Actually, it's funny that the lessons were initially added as a perk on Patreon.
Yeah.
When I started doing that, and that was like the reason anybody ever went to my Patreon. So I decided to have that actually be like a separate for real business, and it just sort of took off on its own, which is really kind of a theme about everything I do, where I don't really plan for anything to happen. It just kind of does.
Yeah.
Like, stuff I actually try to do usually doesn't work, and then stuff I didn't think at all would ever be a thing ends up being the thing.
Yeah, no, I have the same kind of thing that happens to me, so I just kind of go with whatever happens, like go with the flow kind of thing. So
yeah,
I tend to just fall into stuff after a while. So rather than like actually think, oh, I'll do this, and then suddenly like it won't happen, and then I end up dropping into something else. So
yeah, and then beyond that, I'm still trying to like develop a way to play live shows with the MIDI bass and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Still working on stuff with the God Eater, the metal band. We have shows coming up, and we play local stuff. We don't really play out like tours or whatever. Okay. Just play bars. Cool. It's a lot of fun. And I also like all sorts of just like other sort of side stuff. Like I want to. If I do things in the most efficient way possible, then what should happen is that I should be putting out 3 videos a day on YouTube. And I was doing that for the month of July. I actually kept that up with that. And then I went to Dance Fair in Holland.
Yeah.
And that immediately destroyed my flow. And so I've been kind of bumming it for a couple of hours, but I'm about to kick it back into high gear and do more stuff. Cool. And so that involves just coming up with all sorts of stuff to do, usually like making tracks and recording, like the creation process, messing around with the Eurorack stuff and explaining every single thing I can think to explain.
Yeah. Are these like bite-sized videos, or are they quite long?
So they're a bit longer than maybe like more other larger professional channels tend to be. Like they tend to range between like 10 to like 40 minutes.
Okay.
And if there's only when I do live streams, I tend to chop it up and like into clear like half-hour chunks. If whatever I'm talking about like is just done sooner than it is, but then if it also goes longer, then it does.
Yeah,
I wing everything. Like that's actually like a kind of an important thing to think about if anyone ever decides they want to do videos. Like I just said that I want to put out 3 videos a day, 21 videos a week, some huge number per month. Like it's an unimaginable amount of videos.
Yeah,
but I do no video editing.
Okay, so it's all just uncut flow kind of thing. So
exactly, I wing every single thing. I barely plan what I'm going to do, and I just do it.
That's really cool.
And hope it kind of works.
Yeah. That sounds really cool. So it's obviously working for you right now. Cool. So I've got a couple of questions left just to wrap things up. One I always ask everyone, which is your 3 top albums or artists, if you can name them, anything like influential that's stuck with you all this time.
All right. I guess in no particular order in terms of like better or worse. Yep. Hold Your Color by Pendulum.
Yeah.
Animals as Leaders by Animals as Leaders.
Oh, I love that album. That's a good album.
It's really good.
Yeah.
Did you hear the newer one?
No, I haven't yet. No.
It's a lot better than Weightless.
Okay. I'll definitely check that out. It's one band I kind of like. They float in and out of my consciousness. There's another band called Let Live, who I really like, but then kind of they disappear out of my consciousness, and now they've just come back with a new album. So
yeah. Fun fact about Animals as Leaders is that the first album was kind of co-produced with Misha Mansour from Periphery. Mm-hmm. And the Weightless second album was not.
Oh, okay.
And it shows, because Tosin Abasi is like the most ridiculous guitar player alive.
Yeah.
And he is an endless technique kind of riff machine. But like in my opinion, his writing style doesn't really match. So, and like Misha is sort of the exact opposite. Like he's all about groove. He's a totally fine guitar player, but he's not like anywhere near Tosin Abasi. Yeah. So he reins him in and like has him, kind of work it out, which is why, because like Animals as Leaders, the first album was like flawless from beginning to end. Yeah. Every single thing was just perfect and the best it could have been. And Weightless was just meandering and weird the whole time. And then this current one, which I really can't remember the name of the album, damn. But it had Misha was back. Misha came back. So that's why it was good.
Nice. It's funny how that happens, how like artists either they don't become available to produce it, or you find out why that album worked so well before. And it is probably just a producer that can, like you say, rein someone in. Just to, keep it on track, if you will. So their last album was it The Joy of Motion?
Yeah, that. Yeah. I kept wanting to call it Physical Education, but I know that's one of the
It's one of the tracks, yeah. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, no, I'll definitely check that out. I've just added it to my playlist, so as you were talking about it. So I'm gonna definitely check that one out. It came out 2014. You see, they just kind of drift in and out, and I don't if I don't see the name, I don't think about it, but I remember them. I remember that first album being amazing. So
yeah, it's pretty groundbreaking.
Cool.
And then I suppose it's a kind of a toss up. This the third one. It's between the Prodigy Experience by Prodigy.
Yep.
and System of a Down by System of a Down.
Oh, what?
Self-named titles, a lot of self-named albums. I just realized.
But those two are quite different ends of the spectrum. You've
They
got
are
kind of like an early rave album, and then you got System of a Down, which again was very kind of groundbreaking on its own, because there wasn't many bands that kind of threw that kind of sound together. It had like Mr. Bungle and Incubus, but it was kind of a mold of the two. The kind of
yep, and a little bit of Megadeth.
A little bit of Megadeth, yeah. So yeah, no, that's three good albums. 3 good albums and artists. So yes,
yeah,
cool.
Those original albums were pretty big inspirations as far as like my musical styles is concerned.
Yeah, because I can hear like in your music, I heard a couple of like UK sort of dance artists. Cool. And so, what are your hobbies away from music when you're not producing, making videos, things like that? What do you do to kind of?
Well, not a whole hell of a lot.
No.
Especially not these days. Like it's not even really like I don't have the time. Like I said before, like I used to be big in the games. I totally still am. Like I follow gaming news, and like I'm super excited about like the Oculus Rift and the HTC Vive and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like Vive, I call it the Vibe. And like I'm absolutely gonna get one of those because damn. But the kind of time that I used to devote to games is not even a little bit available to me. And it's interesting because it's by choice, you know, because I work for myself and more or less entirely, and because like FiXT just sort of lets me do whatever I want, and so like whatever I'm doing with my time is just kind of based on my own personal decisions about what I want to accomplish, and I just kind of just choose to do that.
Well, thank you for your time. We've come to the end of the show, so thank you for answering my questions and spending a bit of time having a conversation and stuff. So your Wizard Bass EP is out now on FiXT. Go get it on the FiXT store /SeamlessR.
Indeed, it is.
Address.
I also want to point out that there's the deluxe version of the album, which includes the project files to all the tracks.
Oh wow! So people can remix and things like that with them.
Yep, and it's not just stems; it's the actual like the project I used to make it, so that they can see the sound design, they can see the mixing, everything, every single thing from the ground up.
All right, cool. And is that just for FL Studio, or is that?
It is an FL Studio project, so there's that kind of limitation.
Okay, cool. Well, that's really cool. I've not known an artist to do that before. So to give away like the project files, I've seen stems, obviously, because you can get people to remix your stuff and things like that. But the actual project file, that's really cool, and that's only $9.99 on the store. Is that right? I think that is right.
I don't think that's right.
You don't think that's right?
Pretty sure that's just a regular album. The deluxe is something like $30, I think. I forget. But you can also get the individual projects in case you don't want to get the whole thing. But it is cheaper if you do get the whole thing.
Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day.
You too, sir.
Cool. Bye-bye.
Later.
So, we are at the end of another show. That was Stephen, a.k.a. Seamless. Go check out Wizard Bass, which is his current release, out now on FiXT Music. Go to the FiXTstore.com. Maybe buy some other stuff. Use my coupon code. Get 10% off. It's always worth it. Save a buck here. Save a penny there. It's always good. And yes, check out Krakatoa, God Eater on Bandcamp. That's good stuff as well. Just listen to it, and it was good. So, that is it for this week. Next week, I have Dan, a.k.a. Voicians, another FiXT artist, in his first audio interview, all the way from Germany. So, yeah, look forward to that if you're a FiXT fan. So then, yes, that is it for this week's show. So until next week, this is DJ Force X, out.